College Football Can't Be Killed, but It Can Be Changed for the Worse by Kevin Clark, friend of the show, friend of mine who does a great job covering the NFL. I thought it was a great piece. And the thing that really struck me, and we'll get more into the hate here, but he built part of this piece out of something he found of all places, a seemingly calm post at a Reddit college football discussion from a West Virginia fan. And I'm going to read a piece of that as our launching off point, where this person wrote, "The Big 12 is a perfect example of what's going wrong here. I don't know a single Mountaineer who cares about playing any of our conference brethren. Any. Sure, people look forward to playing UT and OU, but that's more out of perception of those programs, not actual disdain or interest in any rivalries. We've been in the Big 12 for 10 years, and we have zero rivalries. Conversely, ask any Mountaineer what teams they hate the most in football, and depending on their age, you'll get responses that are either Pitt, Penn State, or Virginia Tech. West Virginia hasn't played Penn State since 1992, and still some people hold that candle. Pitt is probably our biggest rival, and we've not faced them since 2011. And before 2017, West Virginia hadn't played Virginia Tech since 2005. All of that time never dampened the hate or the interest." And I thought this was huge, and it got me thinking. USC against Minnesota, USC against Indiana, USC against Northwestern. Those games have zero meaning, zero cachet. And so we're trading it. Yeah, USC Michigan, USC Ohio State, USC Penn State are great. But there's a lot of trade-off that comes with that has absolutely zero meaning to either side and is going to mean nothing to us when it's on a Saturday. And that's a big washout.
Yes. And it's also a couple things from the piece that jumped out to me for a couple of respected voices across college football, Pete Thamel and Joel Klatt. Pete Thamel said back in 2011, when the conference realignment stuff really started to crank up with additions to the SEC, to the Big Ten at the time, said that for a sport that is so popular in America, it is a complete outlier in that there's not one person or thing running it, right? It's sort of chaos in terms of leadership of the direction of the sport and where it's going. And that holds true today. And is it television networks that are now running it? Is it Greg Sankey and Kevin Warren, the leaders of the SEC and the Big Ten? I don't know. And where is that going to go, and what's that going to factor in? We've long talked about the need for a college football commissioner. And that leads me to the point from Joel Klatt, where he gave the positive spin on it, saying essentially college football is going to solidify itself as the number 2 sport in America behind the NFL. It may already be there. You could make the argument right now it's already the second biggest sport in America, but wanting to solidify themselves as the second biggest sport by having more of a universal, cross-regional appeal for everyone on television and the way people consume the sports. That doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be regionalized in terms of what you're watching and who is watching what. Now, in theory, I totally understand what Joel Klatt is saying, and it makes perfect sense. But we don't go to college football for that. The reason I go to college football is not for the same reasons I go to the NFL. There's no surpassing the NFL right now to be number 1. If you're already arguably number 2, how about emphasizing the things that make you number 2 and make you so popular instead of trying to change your sport to be more like number 1, even though we're all admitting it's not going to be number 1 because there are so many schools. And it is so regional in a number of areas in terms of rooting interest and who is watching what. So I just don't buy that this is good, ultimately, for the game. It's going to be good for a select few, but it's not good for the sport.